Hi, I'd like to welcome you to Utah Valley University, and I'd like to give you a bit of an overview of the plant and garden projects that we've got planned here on campus. So UVU has a few garden projects that we're planning on campus. The most notable one right now that we're working on is our grit garden. So the grit garden is going to be a market style garden. A market style garden follows the same gardening principles as people like Jean-Martin Fortier or Elliot Coleman, some of these other it's sort of like an older sort of French style that's been adapted to be more small scale. So the market style gardens typically use a 30-inch standardized bed width. So it's a narrower bed, narrower than what you would typically see with like a large scale farm where you would use tractors. Because we have such a small space for our garden, we're going to use a low till management plan and primarily use hand tools to work the garden. So there isn't a lot of, there's not going to be any tractors or any of the um, big machinery or any of that kind of stuff to work this garden. This garden is mostly going to be planted, harvested, weeded, all by hand by hopefully garden workers and volunteers. And another one of the reasons why we went with the market style garden for most of our food production is because we can have more efficient food production in a smaller space. It also saves us a lot more money to go with uh, this style of farming. So the plan for our grit garden space, it's currently planned. We've been allotted this space just to the east of the UCAS building. So that is just north of the Clark building on campus. The grit garden space will have 77 in-ground beds. 21 of those in-ground beds are going to be in a 24 by 96 foot greenhouse. Also in that greenhouse, we intend to have a head house that has a wash and pack station as well as a walk-in cooler to store all of our fresh produce in that we've harvested on the farm. So we're also planning on having a raised bed garden area in the Great Garden as well. The raised beds are probably something that you've seen in growing gardens in backyards uh, or in a community garden setting or something like that. A lot more people are familiar with the raised bed gardens in like normal everyday life. So we wanted to have those available so that people could learn to grow things in the raised beds as well. So raised beds are primarily going to be used for demonstration gardens as well as community education. And we also intend to have some of these wheelchair accessible beds built as well so that people who are in wheelchairs will also be able to come into the garden with us and help dig around as well. So aside from our grit garden, UVU is also planning a native plant garden on campus. Our old native plant garden was under what's now our HR building. So we've been looking at a couple of new locations for our native plant garden. The garden is going to be comprised of plants that are native to Utah and the Intermountain West. We'll have a focus of plants that are water efficient. So most of our native plants here in Utah use less water than a lot of other landscaping plants that are here in Utah. So uh, the hope is that we will be able to use this as a place to showcase native plants, to show how beautiful our native plants are, and also encourage people to use some of the watering methods that we use and some of the plants that we have to put in their own personal landscaping at home. We also intend to have a focus on plantings, mostly perennials in this native plant garden that are culturally significant to Native American peoples. So We hope to have some of the things that are potentially used for ceremonial purposes or plants that are used for food sources and things like that available in this garden so that people can be educated on some of the uses that these plants were used historically by our indigenous peoples. We also have some educational signage that we intend to put up in the space to engage people who are touring the garden and to give a little bit more information on each of the plants that we have there. So this will be mostly a perennial garden, and so these plants will continue to be there year after year, and hopefully we'll get some really nice long-term plants going on in our native plant garden. For our UVU garden goals, the primary goal of the grit garden is to grow produce for members of our UVU community who are in need. So UVU, if you didn't know it, has a food pantry on campus. Food pantry is available to students, faculty, and staff who might be experiencing food insecurity. I think right now our food pantry is only available online. So I encourage you to look it up on the web, especially if you personally are experiencing food insecurity or if you happen to know someone on campus who is food insecure as well. It's a resource that I think really could be helpful to a lot of people on campus. So hopefully spread the word and the good news about our food pantry on campus, especially since a lot of our own UVU grown produce will hopefully be in there soon. We also intend to use the grit and the native plant gardens for teaching research, teaching resources, and research space, mostly for our botany and horticulture classes. So here at UVU, we do have a botany major. So if you're interested in botany, I encourage you to check it out. We're also planning a horticulture minor. The horticulture minor, I believe, is supposed to come online fall of 2022. And then I've listed a few courses here that you might be interested in if you just want to take a plant class. So we have an introduction to horticulture class, a greenhouse management class, a plant propagation class, field botany, flora of Utah, woody plants of Utah, an introduction to grasses, and an ethnobotany class. We also intend to use this space for community education and outreach events. And hopefully as the gardens grow, we'll be able to offer more research opportunities, volunteer opportunities, and even some employment opportunities, hopefully for students in the garden space. So another one of our goals that we have here for our gardens is to be more inclusive with the gardens that we have on campus. So we are going to be setting aside space in the grit garden as well as the native garden to grow plants that are significant to our Native American cultures. So these plants are hopefully going to be used to educate the community about some of their ceremonial purposes. We'd also like to educate people on historical growing techniques and harvesting techniques, and also have some of these varieties that are a little bit more hard to get a hold of and a little more of the traditional Native American varieties. We hope to have kind of a Three Sisters garden planting as well, just so that we can let people know some of the historical ways that these plants were grown. And finally, we want to make UVU's gardens an inclusive and inviting community. I think that gardening is something special to kind of bring people together. And so it's meant to be a safe and supportive place. We want to make sure that it's accessible to people of all backgrounds, people who might be underrepresented in higher education, but really just everybody. We want everyone to be able to grow, gain knowledge, and to just feel welcome in our garden space. We really do intend to make our UVU gardens a place for you. And I thank you for listening to this presentation, and I hope to see you in the garden soon. Thank you.